Welcome to Quick Movie Recaps. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and subscribe. The movie begins with a starship AVALON heading to Homestead 2. Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer, wakes up in his hibernation pod, and the computer tells him that the starship is arriving at a new colony planet. The computer navigates him to his cabin, where he sleeps. The next day, he gets ready to meet fellow passengers but finds himself alone. He asks the computer-generated orientation instructor but gets disappointed in her answer about why no one else is there. Jim goes to the Grand Concourse but gets no help from the information kiosk either. Jim rushes to the command ring to find the captain but can't because the ship crew hasn't woken up yet. He tries sending a message to the Homestead company explaining everything and finds out it will take 15 years to receive his message on Earth. He becomes afraid of his own shadow and starts finding manuals for all the ship's equipment. He tries getting into the hibernation pods but gets suffocated because it cannot get started again once the person has woken up. Knowing he will die alone, Jim is plodding back to his cabin when he sees Arthur, a robot programmed to be a bartender. He knows nothing about repairing hibernation pods. He tries doing everything but cannot get into the control room. Jim becomes more and more desperate and lonely. Jim puts on a space suit and goes outside while safely tethered to the ship. But he contemplates suicide by opening the airlock without a space suit, but stops himself and runs into the pod area. Jim trips near a pod with a lovely woman inside. Her name is Aurora Lane. He reads that a beautiful lady is a journalist traveling to Homestead to have an adventure and learn about why people choose to be a colonist. Jim wishes to wake her up but wrestles with himself about waking her. He knows that it will doom her to die on the ship, but he ends up manually waking her up. The same cheery computer program wakes Aurora and leads her to her cabin to sleep. The next day, they meet while wandering on the Grand Concourse. Jim tells her the truth about how long he has been awake, but he doesn't tell her that he intentionally woke her up. Jim asks Arthur, the bartender, not to tell Aurora what he has done, and Arthur agrees. Aurora starts living her life as any regular passenger, and starts writing her story. After getting to know each other, Jim asks Aurora on a date, and she accepts. After having dinner together, they wear space suits and go outside. Returning, Aurora feels hot and excited, and they go to Jim's cabin and make love. They are happy and enjoy themselves together. They take full advantage of the ship's entertainment and restaurant venues. It's Aurora's birthday when Jim plans a special surprise. He made a ring for her. Aurora goes to the bar and tells Arthur that she and Jim have no secrets and that Jim agrees. Jim steps into the men's room, and Arthur tells Aurora what a good choice Jim made to wake her up. Aurora becomes furious, devastated, and angry and tells Jim to stay away from her. Jim tries to calm down, but she will not speak to him. Meanwhile, Jim plants a tree on Grand Concourse. One day, Gus, the deck crew chief, also woke up much earlier. Gus meets Jim and Aurora, asking who planted the tree where. Jim admits that he grew it. They both tell Gus about hibernation pod failures, but he says they never failed before. They head straight to the command center, where Gus opens the door with his wristband. In the command room, they find that the ship's automatic diagnostics have failed, and they need to check every deck manually. The next day, when Aurora almost drowns while swimming in the pool, everyone rushes to the command room to discuss. Gus collapses, and Jim and Aurora take him to the infirmary and put him in the medical auto-diagnostic scanner. The computer says that Gus can pass away, and Gus puts on his uniform and hands over his wristband to Jim and Aurora so they can access the areas and fix things. He peacefully passes away. They must debunk his body from the starship to prevent it from decomposition. Jim and Aurora locates a meteorite hole in critical areas of Starship. Aurora nearly gets pulled out of the hull as they open one entrance. Jim puts a tablet to her, she blocks it, and they find the fusion engine exhaust must be manually evacuated. Jim must wear a spacesuit to manually override. He goes into the exhaust channel to open a flap, but it won't stay open, so he holds it so the manual vent works. Aurora protests on the radio, but Jim instructs her to pull the lever anyway. Jim's suit cable breaks and his suit also gets a hole. He says a goodbye to Aurora. Aurora puts on a space suit and runs to save him. She grabs Jim's tether, but he's lifeless within. The auto-dock computer says Jim is dead. Aurora uses Gus' bracelet and override code to revive Jim. She's happy he's alive. Later, things are back to normal on the ship. Jim works on the auto-dock and tells Aurora he found that, using the command override, he could put her back in hibernation in the infirmary, but he would be alone again. Aurora chooses to stay awake with him and love him. Cut to about 88 years later. It's the end of the voyage. The captain and crew wake up and find a large tree grown up on the Grand Concourse with lots of plants and vegetation, birds flying, and a cabin. That's the end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.